and welcome back to MCU Explained. I'm Susan.
I'm Tab.
And Tab is back from her trip off planet.
Yes.
And I love your like witchy look, which I'm sure we'll get into why you look so witchy today. But we are MCU Explained, and we are here to talk about episode 7 of Wandavision. And trust us, this is going to be a long episode and B, full of spoilers. So if you're not caught up on Wandavision, 1, what are you doing with your life? But 2, there will be a lot of spoilers. So be sure to watch that episode streaming now on Disney Plus, and then come back and check out our theories and opinions and thoughts and things. But oh my God, Tab.
It's happening.
It's happening. Can I first off say how proud I am that like there were at least 3 major theories that were revealed in this episode that we were completely right about.
Yes.
And one of them we were right about from before the show ever started.
Yes. Yeah, I know we usually go through in order, but I am just going to go ahead and say, like, hopefully if you've been watching us, when Agnes was revealed to be Agatha, it was a lot less confusing for you.
Yeah, right? Hopefully, because also we said that in our before the show ever aired, we did like a little episode that was about like the cast and who we thought everyone was going to be. And even back then we said that we thought Catherine Hahn's Agnes was going to be Agatha Harkness.
Yes.
So at 1 a.m, I did a fist bump, full on Breakfast Club style, and was like, yes, when that happened. So to us. But that's not the only thing we were right about. We'll just get into that as we go through, because we do go through in order.
Yes, we do. Okay. So the first thing I noticed this week, and I wonder if you noticed too, have you noticed that Wanda's voiceover when she says previously on WandaVision has gotten more and more sad?
It's gotten more and more sad and more I hear more questioning. Like it sounds more like a question each week.
Oh, that's fair.
Instead, like it does sound sad, and I totally get where it would be interpreted as sad, but to me it sounds more and more like a question, like she knows less and less of what's happening to her.
Well, that's interesting. This week to me it was just like previously on WandaVision.
I heard previously on WandaVision.
Yeah.
Like it was like, I guess this all happened. And it's like the perfect thing that she created, because let's face it, sitcoms in the 50s were perfect. Nothing went wrong.
Yes.
Everything was comical, and everything was, wrong. You know, like the wrong was like, oh, dinner's not ready on time. Yeah. But like, and so as things have progressed through the timeline, the sitcoms obviously change. Like a 90s sitcom is very different than a 50s sitcom. So to me that tracks, because like things are less and less in her control. And now with the reveal of you're not the only magic person, things are less and less about her, even though I still think they're kind of about her.
They seem to be about her quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it is her world, and she controls it regardless of anything else. So anyway,
so we open with Wanda still in bed. She looks and Vision isn't there. Now we are going to be doing our 2000s, 2010s style sitcom. So there are confessions to camera, like Modern Family or The Office. A lot of the set is also from Modern Family, from one of, I can't remember, but one of the houses in Modern Family. They have the same stairs, they've got the calendar, a bunch of stuff. But
opening credits were very much The Office, though.
They were The Office, and they were also happy endings.
Oh, I loved happy endings. Oh my God, I didn't even notice that. I loved happy endings.
Yeah, the happy endings opening was the word happy over and over, written different places, different things, but the song sounded more like The Office theme song.
Yeah, oh my God, it was. Oh.
They really are mashing everything together, all their inspirations, including this episode had joke cutaways. When Wanda talks about the night before, it cuts away to the sword agents running in terror, but there's hilarious, like, jungle nonsense comedy, which to me is Arrested Development. That's totally
You're
their
right.
bag, was cutting to jokes and having stupid music.
You're right. Oh, oh.
And that would make sense too, because they've referenced Arrested Development before, because the Russos worked on Arrested Development.
Literally in the Civil War airport sequence, they run past the blue staircase, which, by the way, it took me, like, I knew it was there because I'd read that it was there, but I didn't actually see it until probably like 2 years ago. Because I was like, oh, there it is. I knew that it was there, but I finally actually saw it. Like, what? Because usually I'm so watching. That's one of my favorite MCU movies. I think it's like it usually ranks 2 or 3 depending on my mood, and that I'm always just like in that particular scene. So,
even more than just the stair car being there, if you're an Arrested Development fan, Ant-Man does a hop on. He runs up the stair car and hops on, does a hop on. Because you're gonna get some hop-ons.
You're gonna get some hop-ons. P.S. What's hilarious about this that I don't. Maybe I'll cut this out. Maybe I'll leave it in. But my brother leaves notes and he signs off every note with "That's why you always leave a note." And there's one like right above my computer. Like, so I'm seriously looking at, and that's why you always leave a note.
So the twins come up and get Wanda and say their game is freaking out, and then we have a cut seeing that their game controllers turn into every variation of a game controller and then Uno cards. And Billy also said his head is noisy, which I imagine, since he's just now getting his powers, probably he can't block everything out, can't control.
He probably has a pretty weak filter because he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, hasn't practiced. But Wanda is going to punish herself and stay home all day.
And I also liked that she did say quarantine style. And I thought that was like a really nice little nod to like what we're actually going through in this world right now.
Yeah. And then we see that also she's still wearing her Halloween costume from the night before. Basically, Wanda went on a bender.
And we've all been there. We've all been there. Created a world inside our heads, fought with our dead husbands, threw our brother across a fair, and then, just went to bed. Oh, also, turned SWORD, a very, prominent intelligence agency, into a circus.
We already saw the controllers, but now we see a little bit later, Wanda, the milk that she pulls out keeps changing to different variations of milk, different time periods of what milk looks like. So the reality is breaking down, or Wanda's losing her control of the reality, or both.
And I think for me, that interpreted as because we've seen a lot in this show about her dealing with her grief. And to me, this is still all about her grief. So, Vision's not there this morning. They're separate. And he lied to her in the last episode, and so her perfect world's breaking down, her grief is coming through, and as her grief comes through, she's losing control over everything else. And that's kind of how I am interpreting what's going on with her powers, like with the milk and the controllers and other things that we will touch on as we move through this episode.
Yes. The cereal that she's eating is Sugar Snaps, and it has a clown on the box. And I took that to be a reference to, of course, Thanos and the snap, and he's also a clown.
Yeah.
All the people that cross Wanda, bunch of clowns.
Yeah, totally. I definitely didn't put the clown thing together, but I was like, oh, Sugar Snaps, because like the snap and all that stuff. So I definitely put that. And then I really, really wanted to eat cereal.
Fair.
I'm a crazy person.
So then we do go into the credits. Like we said, happy endings, different variations of the word Wanda. And if you catch it in time, one of the frames says, "I know what you did, Wanda."
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Yep.
I saw that.
Like we said, the theme song sounds like The Office, and then the title font is Modern Family's title font.
Yes.
We go to SWORD now, Hayward has those like two loyal people with him, and I've been referring to them as his goons.
Yeah.
So Hayward's there with one of his goons.
Yeah.
And she says they're lucky that Wanda stopped, and Hayward doesn't feel lucky, being a dick. They had to move their headquarters.
Also, like, Hayward, can you just like calm down? Like, this is, I keep getting more and more frustrated with him, and this is probably a controversial thing to say, but like, really, he's like seriously dipping into blame the victim at this point. Like, she's gone through some stuff, and like, she obviously, she's a superpower. She has superpowers. She's gone through some stuff, and now you're blaming her for doing something to help her process what happened to her. We're well past this whole BS about blaming victims. So get it together, Hayward, and recognize that you may think of her as the principal victimizer, but she's in a lot of freaking pain.
Wanda is the poster child for not understanding mental illness.
Right. Yes.
Yes. He asks what happens to the broadcast, and she says it's gone. But there's a couple of things here to note. During this time period in television history, the way that broadcasts aired changed. Do you remember having to get a tuner thing for your TV to be able to, if you didn't have cable, to be able to tune into local broadcasts?
Oh, right. I remember that.
Yeah, it was really annoying.
I also thought she was lying because she delivered that line kind of weird.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just was like, oh, she's lying. I don't know if that's true, but I know that also we're dealing with like goons of Hayward and like how, and they're very loyal to him. So why she would lie, I don't know. She probably has no reason to at all. But I just, for some reason, there was something about the way she said that it's not there anymore that I went, oh, she's lying. And maybe it's what you're talking about, like they just haven't figured out, and like the director was like, hey, so at this point, this is how broadcasting changed, and so you're gonna have to.
I think that's something Darcy would have told them, because presumably they're still trying to use older TVs because that's what worked initially, and maybe don't remember that really weird time period in TV history where you couldn't just watch TV without one of those things or cable.
I think this is around the first time I like turned off cable because I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
It could also just be that it got shut off because of recent events.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced that it's totally Wanda broadcasting it or knowing about the broadcast at all.
I honestly think it's not Wanda broadcasting at this point. Mm-hmm. We'll get there though.
Mm-hmm. Then Hayward says, we launched today, which is nothing good. I guess he's gonna try and attack the barrier like an idiot.
Because that worked out so well for you the other times you've tried to do it. Come on. Like, this is the definition of like, just, why don't you just keep doing the same dumb plan over and over again, and let's see if it works this time for you. Come on.
His attitude actually, where he's going to do it himself, don't you side with superhero people kind of stuff. Maybe that's why they haven't called in Doctor Strange, Hank Pym. I mean, anyone that could look at this. Bruce. See, like, there's so many science people.
Again, this is one of the reasons I think that Doctor Strange is going to show up, is because of the fact that, like, so Hank would have to be called. Bruce would have to be called. Like, these people would have to be called. They don't have like the magic or the ability to sense things beyond like their super intelligence, or to create like things in a lab. Doctor Strange, we've seen him, like, he's the Sorcerer Supreme, so he could show up uncalled by them. And that's one of the reasons that I still think that Steven has to show up at some point, because he would be able to figure this out on his own. Granted, he might be having to look for it, or something, maybe the expansion could have caught his like senses or something like that. But like, there had to have been something to get his attention, but I do think that he could show up on his own without having to be called the way like the scientist would have to be called.
Yeah, the only scientist that actually we maybe have a hope of being called, and I doubt he'll show up if he is called. He might advise over the phone. Is Hank Pym?
Yeah,
because Jimmy could call and it'd be like, "Hey, remember that time that I had to monitor you? Can I talk to Hank?"
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that'd
Or
be
Scott.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. I would take a Paul Rudd cameo just to like.
I'll always take a Paul Rudd cameo.
I will take a Paul Rudd anything, really.
Even calling him to be like, "Hey, do you know anything or someone who can help?"
Yeah. And then have him call Hawkeye, since they have like a working relationship. I don't know, but I still think it's got to be Steven. I'm harping on this because he's my.
No, I know, but I think, see, at this point, I think I've decided Steven's going to show up no matter what. Yeah. So other cameos are also possible.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're working with a baseline of Steven's a shoo-in. So who else
has to show up? No one else can stop this.
Yeah.
I mean, then he's got to take her into his movie. So
no one else can stop this at this point. Like I don't know how else to explain this on our explaining show, but literally there's no one else in the MCU right now who can stop this besides Steven.
We're now at Vision waking up at the circus. He sees that he's been put back together, and then he's mistaken for a new clown, and Darcy is the escape artist because she was handcuffed. She's got that cool jacket on that we saw in the promos. Mm-hmm. As we predicted, Vision remembers Darcy from the previous night.
Yep.
He doesn't remember him because of the hex. His thing where he is like following her around at the circus and being like, "We shared a moment," is so Arrested Development to me. The stupid music is playing again. He's like, there was something between us that we made eye contact, like that.
And the way she's like, "I'm not gonna go out with you," like, yeah, like that. That is very Arrested Development, very much.
We go back to Wanda, and she says, "If Vision, they're like, where's Dad? If he doesn't want to be here, nothing she can do about it." Now we know, because later in the episode, he figures it out, or we figure it out, I guess, that Vision's not there because Agnes is impeding him. Agnes is impeding him, trying to keep them separated, like she kind of has been the whole time. Mm-hmm. Billy asks about Pietro and the re-killing Dad thing that he said. I'm not a kid person. I forgot that fake Peter or no fake Peter, you can't say what he said in front of the kids.
Right.
So right. That makes you so mad.
Repeat everything that you say, especially at that age. My niece is currently like right around that, like she's hitting that 7 mark. Like, I know they're 10 in the show, but she repeats everything you say, even if it's a joke to another adult.
This is when Wanda says that wasn't their uncle, but she doesn't know who it is, and she has a bit of an existential crisis in front of the kids. Mm-hmm. Their acting during this is A+. They both look concerned and horrified.
Right.
Great acting.
What would you do if your mom was acting like that? Like, no, this is our uncle. Like, this is like, meet your uncle. And then that's not my uncle. I don't know who, that's not your uncle. I don't know who that is.
She said, nothing matters. Feel free to decide for yourself, but nothing matters. So yeah, existential crisis. Fun fact, if you're having an existential crisis, studies have shown that taking 2 Tylenol will snap you out of it.
Really? Mm-hmm. Taking 2 Tylenol of all things?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Huh. Interesting.
Okay. So someone knocks on the door. Wanda magics it open, says, "Hi, Agnes." She doesn't want to get up. And Wanda has her own cuts to camera where she says, like, Wanda was close to cutting her own bangs, which is how you know that someone's really going through a hard time is when they cut their own bangs. For a reference, see Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey. I also immediately thought of Brittany.
Brittany. Mm-hmm.
Who did way more than cut her own bangs, but
never.
Definitely. Yeah.
Never. So Wanda happily lets Agnes take the kids.
And did you have your oh crap moment right there?
I did.
Okay, cool. Because I did too. And yes, we've already revealed on this episode that we were right about her being Agatha Harkness, but like in the course of the show, like you shouldn't really be nervous about your best friend / neighbor taking your kids, but you know, the fact that she is a witch, and a powerful one at that, like I definitely was like, oh, don't go to her house. No.
She bit a kid once, which there's a lot of Spider-Man memes about that she was a spider and she bit Peter.
Mm-hmm.
She also says she has a suspicious mole on her back, which honestly I think was probably a reference to a witch's mark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But she was gonna let her see, I guess, if she would have looked.
Yeah.
So they go. And now the furniture and items in Wanda's home keeps reverting to the previous time periods. In addition to seeing Wanda's magic, which is red in this, there's also purple, green, and blue, which are, we can now safely suspect other people's magic.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially because we did see that Agatha's is purple.
Agatha's is purple.
Mm-hmm.
And then Wanda says she's fine like 100 times in a row. She's not fine.
Also, I understand, girl. I get it. So
Stormed.
Excellent. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
What a great week for this episode to air, by the way, with everything that you were going through, and like to have this like Wanda and her existential crisis happen like right during this entire like Texas frozen over week.
It's very relatable.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I thought of you several times during the episode because of stuff like that, like where it's like you couldn't control stuff, but you like wanted, you know, you're trying so hard to like maintain your normalcy, but like it's completely out of your control at this point.
Yes. And I also, she goes throughout the episode, what she's doing to make herself feel better is watch TV. And my husband and I like had our laptop and we're just like sitting watching Bob's Burgers.
I get it.
Fine.
I get it. Everything's fine. During the fires, for me, it was Star Trek TNG. I just was like watching episodes of TNG being like, everything's fine.
It's fine. I'm in space.
We're headed towards the Federation of Planets and everything's going to be okay. It's going to be a utopian society. And it's going to be good. This is fine.
So Monica and Jimmy are on their way to meet up with Monica's people. And Jimmy does get Darcy's email about Project Cataract. And it reveals that Hayward was trying to bring Vision back online against his express wishes. And he couldn't do it. Nothing.
Yes. You know how there's that, again, there's a lot of psychology that's in this show that like I've seen a therapist for so many years that I'm like, okay, cool, transference and projection. He's blaming Wanda for something that he was trying to do. He's like against his own living will. Well, like she's terrible for bringing him back. What were you trying to do? You're blaming her for the exact thing that you were trying to do. You jerk. You need to see a therapist, man.
And I've even seen people hypothesize that maybe Vision would have had his memories if Hayward hadn't been dicking around with them.
Maybe
it wasn't the hex. So anyway, nothing Hayward did worked until Wanda came up with her superpowers and just magicked him back alive. I'm sure that's very frustrating too.
I'm sure that's insanely frustrating, but also again, you know what also could have avoided this? What if he just talked to her about it?
Nah, doesn't sound like him.
It doesn't sound like him, but like, you know, she was made from the Mind Stone. He in this version, you know, she was made from the Mind Stone. He was also literally made from the Mind Stone with the Mind Stone. Come, like, wouldn't that be logical?
Now they're meeting up with Monica's army buddies, who are also her mother's army buddies, based on the short exchange they have. I think it's important to note that we did not get to meet the aerospace engineer. They weren't there. Mm-hmm. Didn't even get a name. These are the people that went from the aerospace engineer and were entrusted with bringing this to Monica. So like I said, I think sometime later, at some point, we'll find out who it was, but probably not in this show. Not in the course of this show.
Yeah, I still want it to be in this show, though.
I do too. We're back with Vision and Darcy. He's chasing her around, and then he distracts her so he can wake her up. So we got that right too. Now they can talk. She says she has answers. And then one of the former SWORD agents tries to stop them from leaving, and she punches him. Of note, this is the guy who wouldn't help her lift the thing. And it's also the same guy who handcuffed her to the car.
Like, I did not notice that, but that's amazing.
He had it coming.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely.
So they go on their way, and the first things that Vision asks are questions Darcy can't answer, like if his kids are okay.
Yeah.
No. And who was that? Who was that fake Peter? Didn't know. But he did on his own figure out that that was an imposter. Right. And I'm imagining he knew maybe even before Wanda that he suspected.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was a little bit, because like Vision barely would have even met the real Peter.
If nothing else, you could tell from the way that Wanda was acting that she wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's more that. But yeah, I that when he said fake Peter, I was like, what? How would he know that? And then was like, I guess he did meet Pietro.
He probably at least knows what he looked like.
Yeah, for sure.
We go back to Wanda now. And she's looks happy. She's watching TV, got her cereal, just like me.
Yeah. Just like all of us.
Just like all of us. But then everything starts changing again. Yeah. Her furniture and her TV and everything starts changing again. And she doesn't know what's happening, why it's happening. She doesn't know why she can't fix it back. And the director off camera says, do you think maybe this is what you deserve? It's Catherine Hahn disguising her voice. Spoiler. If actually some people have repitched it so you can hear that it's her. But it's
okay, because I listened to that so much. Like I seriously, after the reveal, I went back and like listened to it, and I was like, this really doesn't sound like her. But truth be told, I'm not the most like in tune with stuff like that. So I'm glad that someone reverse engineered it to make sure that it's actually Catherine Hahn, because I seriously was like, oh no.
And then Wanda was upset and confused that the camera person was speaking at all. Right. Very unusual.
Right.
Okay. We go to our commercial. The regular actors are back. Mm-hmm. The main girl and the pharmacist. Mm-hmm. It's a depression commercial where the solution is Nexus. So here is our first, in this episode, deep explanation, deep dive into what is Nexus. The Nexus in Marvel is the cross-dimensional gateway. It's a path to any and all possible realities, including the realities between realities. And it is possible that there's one place in each multiverse where this, I guess, entry point sort of appears naturally or was created by someone, not sure. But it would appear somewhere in each world, and you could use that to cross over into other realities.
Yep.
And then there are Nexus beings, which are very rare. They are entities that can affect probability and the future and alter the time stream. So they're watched by the TVA, which we know is going to be in Loki.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only supposed to be one per universe. So Wanda is one, but so is Vision. But there's only supposed to be one per universe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they can mess things up, mess up the way things are supposed to be. And Nexus beings have the potential to produce unbelievably powerful offspring. And it was said that if the Scarlet Witch had any offspring, they would be powerful enough to stand among the great forces of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
The great forces of the universe.
Like, if you've read Young Avengers,
/
Wiccan definitely does. Billy.
/ abstract entities are they're living beings. They don't have bodies, but they can sort of manifest fake bodies to interact with people, and they're basically like parts of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like eternity, infinity, death. The Phoenix Force is one that you're maybe familiar with from X-Men. But the most interesting one on that list, as far as WandaVision goes, is Eternity, because he has a history with both Doctor Strange and Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Nightmare was once able to capture him somehow.
Yeah, like it was more like trick him and trap him.
Trick trap.
Like a trick trap, like a bait and switch.
And then Doctor Strange was able to come and help out and free Eternity.
It's like extract him from the trick trap. Yeah. It's also interesting to think of Eternity in the sense that the Eternals movie is also coming out too, which again, it just hints that there are so many more elements to this that WandaVision's setting up currently, you know?
Yeah. And Eternity is, every universe has one. He's basically like a living being that is your version of the multiverse.
He's like I know we're supposed to be an explaining channel, but it's really hard to explain these types of beings in the Marvel universe. Like, it's really difficult to explain the concept of eternity manifested in sort of a human, but not really. It's like if a ghost was and like called eternity, but it could also inhabit a physical form. I mean, one of those real hard things to explain. Sorry, we're supposed to be an explaining channel.
No, I think that's pretty good. He's our universe.
Yeah.
And he can manifest as a kind of person looking thing if he wants. And the next universe over, they have their own version of him, and so on and so on. And if he were to be destroyed, our universe would be destroyed.
Yeah, he's the physical manifestation of everything that is on our timeline / universe, like where we are in the multiverse. That was good. That was fine. We kind of covered that.
And also, since the TVA we mentioned is involved in Loki's show, one of the runs that it seems like they might be the damn Kibblesmith run that I mentioned last video. Loki has to deal with Eternity's children in that, so he is just sort of popping up in these little maybe places where they've been pulling inspiration from.
And that's also interesting to think that Eternity could be involved in this new phase of the Marvel universe in general, because if like we keep running into it doesn't seem like yet we've at least run into actual Eternity. We're running into like the children or other characters that have like paralleled or been adjacent to Eternity. So it's kind of like the way they set up Thanos at first, where at first we were just meeting all these characters that had very like tie-ins with Thanos. And not that Eternity is like a big bad or anything like that. It's actually completely the opposite. We do not want Eternity to be destroyed. But it is interesting to do a similar setup where you're like, let's introduce all the concepts behind the gems and Thanos and the gauntlet and everything before we actually like boom hit you with Eternity.
We'll work our way up to it.
Right. And I actually think that's the kind of the brilliance of the MCU. Like, would you have really accepted, having never read a comic book in your life, would you really have accepted the idea of an Infinity Gem just like right off the bat?
Probably
you know,
not.
like you have to have the Tesseract that's set up in Captain America First Avenger that's then revealed to be the Space Stone later after you figure out all these different things it can do. Like that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Like you see Loki control people with his staff before you find out that the staff is the Mind Stone. Like it's just it's I trust the way they set things up. So if they're trying to like plant the seeds of eternity in order to like build us up to the concept of understanding, like there is a manifestation of our version, our universe in the multiverse, and each multiverse has their own. Like if they're trying to build us up to that concept by doing little seeds right now, go for it.
So that was our break to give a bunch of background.
Yeah.
But back to the commercial.
Actually, I think I'm gonna remove that little bit and make like that as a clip.
All right, so back to the commercial.
Mm.
The Nexus pill anchors you to your reality or the reality of your choice. So again, playing with realities. Here's a pill that you could take and maybe move to a different reality. And then the tagline for this one is because the world doesn't revolve around you. Or does it?
I love that tagline because I was like, haha.
So if we get into really the Nexus and all that, I think that uneducated guess, if we assume that Nightmare is the villain like we are, that he might be wanting her kids to help him take down Eternity because for some reason he keeps trying to do that.
Yep.
So after the commercial break, we now see Agnes at her house for the first time inside with Tommy.
By the way, her house, if you walked in there and you weren't like, a witch lives here, like, come on.
Yeah, no. A witch lives.
Didn't try to have like a perfect house or anything like that. It was just like, no, I'm a witch.
No, I'm a witch. Billy says he likes it there because it's quiet, and that Agnes is quiet on the inside. Presumably, she's either using her powers to steal her thoughts, like Professor X, Jean Grey. If you're familiar with that, they can do that. Or she's not in control of her thoughts, and therefore someone else is puppeting her, let's say.
I find both to be equally likely.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Or it's a combination of both those things, which is why he could be so surprised at how quiet it is.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because even like Jean Grey and Professor X, they'll let through, for like a kid, they'll let through like some thoughts.
Yeah.
Especially if like, you know, Professor X would be like, oh, this kid needs to like learn his powers and how to filter, so let me show him. So she definitely doesn't want kids hearing what she's doing, but also she might not be in control of everything.
And in the cutaway, she mentions Ralph again, which fun to note now that we know she's Agatha Harkness, for sure. In the comics, Agatha is married, but you never see her husband or even find out if Harkness is his last name or her maiden name. And it's really unclear whether he's alive or if he passed away a long time ago because Agnes is really old.
Or I always thought that she was like keeping him somewhere.
Or she's keeping him somewhere.
That's like I just always assumed that that's like, you know, she's a witch. So like she probably needs some sort of you know, human to have for their fingernails and teeth and stuff.
Yeah, he could be the rabbit.
He could be the rabbit. Totally could be the rabbit, because as we know, the dog's not around anymore, but the rabbit is.
Yeah.
She did keep the rabbit.
So we go back to, now we're with Monica and Jimmy again, and she's putting on her astronaut stuff to go into the Hex. They are all very confident that this is going to work.
Shout out to the guy dressing her, because apparently he's a friend of Paul Bettany's and has been his costume guy for like years and finally got to be on camera in this. So yeah, that's why you should follow everybody in the MCU on their Instagrams, because especially like people like Paul Bettany love to put in these little tidbits about that. So shout out to him for getting for finally getting to do something like that. That's exciting.
So unfortunately, it does not go well when Monica tries to drive into the barrier. It matches her density to keep it from crossing over, but it still also manages to start taking parts of the rover and transform it, even though it's not really getting through the barrier. And so Monica has to bail before it transforms her. And it like spits out the rover, which is now half a pickup truck. So Monica decides that she can get through on her own and runs into the barrier, claws in, Vision style. And we hear Carol and Nick Fury in her head again. Specifically, we hear Fury when he told her that she could come to space with them when she glowed like her auntie. And worth noting too, the inside of the barrier is not red, even though the outside is, because Wanda re-magicked the outside, let's say. The inside is purple, blue, and green. So there's that purple magic again.
And also, that's another thing that when you go back and look at like when Monica went through the first time, when she touches it, it's purple, blue, and green. So like Wanda isn't, I really don't think Wanda's lying when she says that she doesn't know how this started, because it was like, there are hints that she did not start it. She's just now, like she's in control of it now, or was at the beginning. But yeah, purple, blue, and green in the middle.
So third time's a charm. When Monica emerges from the other side, she can see energy waves. That's what that weird out of focus thing is, and her eyes change. So she has her powers now.
Check box for us.
Check for us. And just a quick reminder, because it's been a while since we talked about Monica with her powers, or spectrum, photon, whatever she ends up going by. She can transform herself into any form of energy within the electromagnetic spectrum. So X-rays, ultraviolet, microwaves, radio, pretty much anything you could think of.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we talked, because we did mention she has a ton of powers.
She has a ton of powers.
And I can't remember if we talked about these last time, but reviewing where things are going with the show and what she might have to do here in the last few episodes, it's worth noting that she has energy duplication. So she can duplicate energy that's thrown at her. And energy absorption. So she can also absorb that energy if it's the right type and the right wavelength. But we've kind of seen this before, like when Thor lightnings up Iron Man, it doesn't hurt him, it charges him up, and then he can blast back.
Yeah.
That, but without the suit.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was going to explain it. So, yay.
Also worth noting that in the comics, Monica is considered a mutant. This was a mutation.
Yeah.
So, our first official MCU mutant, probably.
Probably.
Technically, the first one would have been Wanda and Pietro.
Mm-hmm. Because there was something in their DNA. Just to remind you guys, there were other people who they experimented on with the Mind Stone before Wanda and Pietro. Wanda and Pietro are the only ones who developed powers with it. Therefore, it is safe to assume there was something already in their genetic makeup that would have allowed them to develop powers with exposure to the right energy source or thing or whatever. Which again,
Monica just got
yeah,
exposed to a bunch of radiation, and here now she has powers.
Right. So this could be the way mutants occur in the MCU, is there's something in their genetic makeup, but maybe it has to be activated somehow.
Okay, so then we're back with Vision and Darcy, and Darcy has just finished filling him in, presumably, because now he knows that he was killed. She basically caught him up on the events of Infinity War and Endgame. Yep. They're hitting a lot of red lights. So again, Vision thinks that Wanda is delaying them, trying to keep them from getting there. But really, Agatha does not want Vision and Wanda interacting. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you go back since the very beginning, she's been trying to separate them, sow chaos, create problems and rifts between them. And that's also what Quicksilver did mm-hmm. when he came in. Mm-hmm. Making problems.
Yeah, and even she's actually the one that causes the misunderstanding in the very first episode. Like, she's the one who tells Wanda that it's like their anniversary and to like be sexy and stuff. Like she like every single, when we get to the song, which is the most brilliant thing ever, like it really was Agatha all along. Like you can go back and every little misunderstanding, fight, whatever, is caused by her.
Sowing the seeds.
Yeah, though the one that I'm iffy about was the gum. That's not like, she didn't really cause the gum.
She kind of seemed like she was making it worse.
Yeah, when she was sitting there. But
so Vision is also learning about Jarvis and Ultron for the first time again. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. A lot of stuff to take in.
Yeah.
And he asks, what is he now? And Darcy isn't sure, because before she thought he was basically just a machine.
Yeah.
But he can't leave the Hex. He falls apart. So he must be something more than that. Mm-hmm. And she does tell him that after watching the show, she knows that they really love each other. The love they have, Wanda and Viz, is very real.
Yeah. Which could be why Agatha's trying to keep them apart. Because mm-hmm. like if nothing else is real but their love, that creates a problem for whatever situation she's trying to manipulate, you know, because you can't really manipulate that if it's that real, you know.
Also, if they're both Nexus beings, maybe she's trying to separate them permanently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're back with Monica, who's running to Wanda's. We cut to Wanda, and she was maybe taking those Nexus pills. She had a bottle with a red label on it.
Yeah.
Of course, she's real displeased, let's say, about Monica being there. She doesn't want to talk about Hayward. She doesn't want to talk about Vision. She is real mad immediately and magics Monica up into the air. And when she throws her down, Monica's powers kick in and stabilize. Superhero landing. And Wanda also reacts to this and recalculates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe Monica having some abilities would soften Wanda towards her a little bit, because those are mostly her friends.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Sure. Mostly.
So she does actually start talking to her, and Wanda's worried she's already the villain, and Monica's talking her down. She's telling her that she knows what grief is like. The worst thing that she can think of has already happened. Here comes Agatha. Gonna take her away. Not allowed. No talking to Wanda. And there's the mailman again. Also.
Yeah. The mailman again with his
with
a whole bunch of packages for a place that doesn't exist.
Packages are still getting through. People
somehow, right? Is that where all of the USPS packages went? You know, we were having that huge problem with the mail. They're all in the hex, guys.
He's working for a company called Presto now, and he has a rabbit on his hat.
Yep.
So, more magic nonsense. I'm just going to say, okay, this has to be, I guess, either they're really messing with us about this guy who keeps pulling focus, or he's the witness protection guy, so that later we're like, oh.
Yeah, he has to be the witness protection guy, right?
Yeah, right? I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, the thing is to this episode, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's the guy from Sword that got pulled in, but it's not.
It's not.
Because also the mailman was in the hex before the guy from Sword came in the beekeeper outfit. So, like, whatever, it's got to be the witness protection guy.
We don't know where the bee guy is.
Yeah, we don't know where the bee guy is. That's why I was like, oh, maybe it's this guy. And I was like, no, because the mailman was a thing before the bee guy was a thing.
Some people have thought that in another episode in the opening credits, there's an ice cream man serving.
Yeah, we mentioned that in one of the other episodes.
But guess what? That's a different actor because I looked into it.
Okay, there you go.
So, I mean, here's a total tangent for you. If going through the barrier is activating some people and this guy came out with bees on him, he might end up being Swarm, which is a guy made of bees. And so maybe he's just a bunch of bees right now.
Oh my God. Well, that would explain. Oh my God. How this tangent is dangerous because I'm just like, okay, well, that's obviously how maggots created because like think of all the worst mutants in X-Men. Like this is just the like catalyst to make all the terrible mutants.
Yep. Just start coming through there, be all the blob.
Yeah, the blob just shows up. Like all the ones that you're like, why would this be a thing? They were all created in the hex.
Perfect.
Yeah, done. Now
so we're with Darcy and Vision who are still stuck at the stoplight. Now there's a bunch of kids crossing the street. Vision is talking to camera and he's saying, you know, he didn't realize how much Wanda had been through and that for her it's only been a few weeks, like hardly any time at all. And then he realizes he can just fly away and leave. So he does. So good for him to just fly off.
Really funny because that was something when they kept complaining about the barriers, like you know, the construction crew and all that, and the kids, and I was just like, why doesn't he just fly? He flew in the last episode. Why isn't he flying?
That's again where I think that sometimes Vision does get pulled back in, like not in a real way.
Yeah. But
like forgets that this is all sort of fake.
Okay. It reminds me of, you know, when like people in relationships don't like the same things necessarily, and one of them is doing something just for the other person to appease them. That to me is the equivalent. Like he's playing along with sitcom rules in order to appease Wanda because this is what she wants and he loves her. But then every now and then he's like, oh wait,
it's more important that I just go.
It's more important for me to be myself than it is for me to just play along with her. Like, and that's healthy. So Vision is actually behaving quite healthy in this scenario.
We go back to Agatha and Wanda. Agatha has escorted Wanda into her home. She goes to make her tea.
Missed something. Why did they show Dottie?
Oh, right. They did show Dottie again. Dottie is credited in being, that actress Emma Caulfield is credited in being, I think, at least one more episode. So, but let's come back to Dottie because I have some interesting thoughts.
Okay, I was going to say, why? Why did they show her for that freaking split second?
She's still there.
She's still there.
In case you forgot, she's still there.
Yeah. She was very intrigued with the idea of Monica having powers. She looked right at both of them.
So Wanda notices that all the twin stuff is there. They had snacks or whatever, but they're gone. And then there's a cicada. So let's dig into cicadas a little bit because there's a lot of mythology involving cicadas.
Yep.
They're not the same as locusts.
They are not the same as locusts.
Important.
They're very different and they're very awful. I hate cicadas.
Since I grew up in the South, very familiar with cicadas.
I was gonna say, I did not grow up with cicadas. I was introduced to them as an adult, and that's almost worse because you are not prepared for like the plague-like, biblical plague-like beings that they are. And P.S. I know that the plague is actually locusts. It's not cicadas, but Jesus, holy moly, like cicadas are not an okay thing.
No, they're not. They're horrifying.
They have like a 17-year cycle.
Yeah, I'll put some pictures of them in so everyone knows.
God.
So a couple messages we got and people online in general pointed out when Mephisto appears in the comics, he first appears as a fly. So here's a bug, not the same. And
a worse one.
We haven't ruled out Mephisto. Susan and I are just very into the nightmare theory now.
Yeah, of course, Susan is very, very into the nightmare theory, but Tab and I have not ruled out Mephisto. In fact, like a lot of people that I know are still very much on this Mephisto train, and I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I would love it if Mephisto showed up in the MCU. That'd be fantastic. Think of all the things we could do with him.
Both are fun villains.
Yeah, both are amazing villains. And we spent the first half of this show being so about Mephisto that I feel like moving on to a different villain actually helps explain more of the bigger picture that the MCU could be, you know, painting right now.
So cicadas, there's a lot of mythology and things about them. They represent resurrection, immortality, like a spiritual awakening, spiritual ecstasy, and for many people personally, they represent personal change. So like renewal, rebirth, transformation, change.
You actually can look up on like Instagram or the internet, like people who get cicada tattoos. Like it's a very common tattoo to get, especially when you go through something like after surgeries or like, and reading people's stories as to why they chose cicadas is actually, the symbolism of cicadas are much more beautiful than like the actual grossness of the bug itself.
So in case you're not familiar with cicadas at all, cicadas are kind of like butterflies, and then they start off as one thing and turn into another thing. Oh, did you not know that, Susan?
No, I did know that. I just think it's interesting that you would be like, oh, here's the prettiest like bug that there is, and compare it to the worst one.
Well, they go through the same, they both go through like a tree.
I know, but I'm like, really?
Okay, so aside from Susan thinking they're horrifying, the other difference—
Ignore me at this point.
The other difference between the transformation that a cicada goes through as opposed to a butterfly is it doesn't like do I'm going to wrap up in a cocoon, I'm going to disappear for a while I make my transformation. It changes within its existing form and then pops out the back of it. As a child, we used to find cicada shells, which are little empty bugs, like on our house and stuff.
You can find them on trees, on houses, all over the floor sometimes. And when you step on them, it always feels like you're crushing something important.
So that's one of the reasons why there's such a big representation of a total change, because there's no waiting. You emerge completely different from your former self.
Yeah.
Socrates was real into cicadas. And he thought they were once humans who allowed muses to enchant them into becoming cicadas, essentially, so that they could always sing and would never need food or sleep.
Sing.
They
sound like screaming. They don't sound like singing. They sound like they're screaming nightmares into you.
And then their job, the job of the cicada for the muses, was to watch the humans and report back on who honors the muses and who doesn't. So a cicada being there might actually be a spy. It's also a great metaphor for the transformation that Wanda is about to go through.
Oh, absolutely. Especially now that we have the reveal of Agatha Harkness and Wanda can completely embrace her magic. That's amazing. The fact that we know that she's going to be in Doctor Strange 2, working alongside the Sorcerer Supreme again, or maybe, alongside, in opposition to, we don't know what Wanda's going to do.
She's there.
Because Wanda's been on both sides of the equation in the comics, so who knows? But point being, she's about to really embrace how freaking powerful and how freaking magical she is. And that is a perfect metaphor for it, because she really isn't gonna change necessarily, like her physical being. She's just gonna be born into a new magical self.
Yes.
And fine, the metaphors behind cicadas are completely beautiful, but guys, if you've ever dealt with them, like, oh my, it's like living in a nightmare dealing with cicadas. And then also, if you haven't, like, avoid it at all costs would be my recommendation.
They do get, especially because they're all on different cycles.
Yeah.
And so there's one cycle I can't remember, but it happened here the year, because I used to live somewhere else. It happened the year I moved back, where there was like so many of them. It was one of the biggest cycles, and they were all really big.
Just the noise, man, though. The noise.
Yeah.
It's the noise and stepping on the shells. I might be able to deal with the rest if it wasn't like the screaming and the stepping on the shells. It just seems, to bring it back to Nightmare, if he was going to trap me in his dimension, that might be one real good way to go for me.
Wanda asks, where are the twins? And Agatha says, well, they're probably just playing in the basement. Super normal. So Wanda goes to the basement to look for them. And it sure is a creepy murder Dexter looking thing at first, with all the plastic sheets everywhere.
Yeah, at first I was like, this is a murder cave right here.
Cave.
But then it's purple and pretty.
And there's some trees.
And then it's a lot bigger than a normal basement, and definitely extends past the limitations of her house.
So I mean, I'm sure you were the same way. When I first saw the trees coming out of like an archway door and she starts on that hall, I was like, oh my God, she's going to the nightmare dimension.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh my God, she's going into the nightmare dimension right now.
So, but even though this ended with her like in that occult room, it definitely feels like she maybe went to another dimension. So right here in Agatha's basement, maybe this is where the Nexus is.
For sure, that is a possibility. It also really reminded me of, once again, in Doctor Strange, that room where they kept the Eye of Agamotto and they could get to all the different sanctums really quickly from one spot. It definitely reminded me of that. Plus, there was a book full of change with yellow magic on it.
Oh, don't you worry about talking about that.
Okay. I was like, did Tab skip this? Because that seems unlike her.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
So, yeah, so there's a bunch of archways that imply other doorways to other places in this place. And then there's a bunch of fun witch Easter eggs. It looks like she had a Baphomet bust on the wall, which is the goat. Yeah. And there's a bunch of gold jewelry-esque things mounted near the ceiling in different things. And then of course she has a cabinet full of bones, cabinet full of animal bones. And then there's that glowing book. It's glowing orange, which is a magic color we've seen before. And now we can say with absolute certainty, we are going to identify magic by color, because Doctor Strange is orange, Wanda's is red, and Agnes is purple. So there's different magics. So it appears to have scissors on the cover. So I have 3 options for what this book could be, and the third one is the one I think is most likely. So first of all, it could be the Darkhold. Interestingly enough, about the Darkhold is that there was going to be a comic called Darkhold was supposed to come out in October last year, but it was delayed due to pandemic reasons. So all I have for that is a description of what it was supposed to be about, which is, for hundreds of years, scholars and heroes alike have searched for the complete text of the Darkhold, also called the Book of the Damned, written by the Elder God, whose name I don't know how to pronounce. Is it Cthon?
Oh, I always say Cthon, but that's because I always see it written.
Yeah. So Cthon is basically Marvel's Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
So in this comic, it doesn't say who this is, but it says yet, because obviously there's a description, but it does say that one of the greatest sorcerers in the multiverse finds it. And Cthon finds him, and to save them all, the Scarlet Witch must gather the world's greatest heroes and unleash their inner darkness. So apparently there was supposed to be a comic out by now about the Scarlet Witch, Cthon, and the Darkhold. It's worth noting that they did have the Darkhold on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at one point. It looked very different than this book. Mm-hmm. We still don't know if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is technically canon.
Yeah.
Especially if it is, they did mess around with time so much on that show. And in the end, that when it was over, it seemed like they did not end up in their original timeline. So, canon or not, this could be the Darkhold from another timeline. It could also be another version of the book, because people keep copying it down when they get their hands on it. So, like, there's more than one copy.
But the fact that this one is wrapped in Doctor Strange's magic, doesn't that kind of seem like maybe this could be the real one, if it's that?
That's fair. I actually, wait, you're going to love it when I get there.
Okay. All right. I should just let you talk.
Another option is the Necronomicon, which is actually derived from a small part of lore in the Darkhold, or patterned after it. The Necronomicon in Marvel Universe.
I was going to say, this is different than Evil Dead, guys.
Slightly. So in Marvel, the Necronomicon can be used to summon and invoke demons and gods. It also has information on vampires, werewolves, and the Undying Ones. It has some information about the future because there's events in it that happened hundreds of years after the book was written. And the Scarlet Witch thought that the Necronomicon was an abomination, and she thought that all the copies had been destroyed. But then a possible Agatha Harkness imposter told her it would be helpful and useful to use it with the problems that Wanda was having that were demonic in nature. Currently in the current comic timeline, the only person that we know for sure has a copy of it is Doctor Strange. Now, here's my third one. The Necronomicon from Earth 818793. So an alternate universe Necronomicon. Which
you think this one's the most likely?
It has the powers to create portals through time and between realities.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Yes.
So here's what you're either going to love or hate about this.
I'm here for it.
Earth 818793 is Ash Williams' universe. Ash is in the Marvel Zombies run because since this is his Necronomicon, it also raises the Deadites.
But P.S. Sam Raimi doing Doctor Strange 2
increases the likelihood.
And also would be the only Bruce Campbell cameo that I would be okay with. It does present the only scenario where I'm okay with Bruce Campbell being shoehorned into Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you're a fan of Ash Williams and you didn't know, he's in Marvel Zombies. slash Army of Darkness. It's a crossover. So this version of the Necronomicon, one of Doctor Strange's sentient books, said that it's actually translated from the original and it's written in blood on the flesh of the damned and the tortured.
Again,
and it disappeared.
The reason why Doctor Strange would like cover it, because I feel like one of the reasons Agatha wanted, because they did such a shot of that book, I feel like one of the reasons Agatha wanted Wanda in that room is because she can't open it.
Interesting.
Like Doctor Strange has it magicked up, and maybe she can't get through his magic, and she thinks maybe Wanda can.
One of the main reasons I think it is maybe this book, other than upcoming Sam Raimi Doctor Strange, is the scissors on the cover look like they're mirrored and there's something between them. Look kind of like a mirror reality.
Yeah.
So that's my educated guess. And then it's also we're also about to sideways deep dive into something else. In the 1994 Scarlet Witch run, Wanda discovers a hidden passageway in a library that leads her down into an impossibly cavernous occult shrine. So here's that. In the center of that room, she finds a book. And it fills her with the knowledge of her being a Nexus being.
Aww.
It lets her know what her unique, because each Nexus being has their own unique power and way to affect reality and outcomes, and hers is hex power in the hex, and again, one per universe. Usually there is a being who doesn't like that, called Lore, evil Nexus being. Basically the inverse of the Scarlet Witch. She's her not another reality her, but everyone has their villain that's kind of like them.
Yeah, for sure.
So Lore can travel between dimensions, control people's minds and bodies, raise the dead. She can fire off energy blasts, and she can drain entire planets' energy to replenish herself. So Lore's whole thing is going from dimension to dimension, conquering it, killing the Nexus being there, and feeding on their power.
Dislike.
So maybe that's Dottie?
Maybe. Oh, that's good. Because like I was saying to you via text message, where I was just like, the whole Dottie thing is really confusing me, because there was and this obviously is like a sitcom thing as well, but there is the constant idea that Agnes is intimidated by Dottie. So even when they're doing the like PTA meeting, she's like undermining her in these like little side quips, and she's the one that says like she controls the neighborhood. So that would be a real interesting thing for Dottie to wind up being Lore.
Yes. And it would be fun to get someone who's essentially a Scarlet Witch villain.
Yeah, because like she's not really in anything else besides just to be against Wanda. And it would be real nice, like, to have something that, how like we sometimes get like the one-on-one villains in the MCU that are like, these are the villains that only exist for that character, and then there's also the element of another villain. This would be a great one to have, like there be Lore, so that way this is WandaVision at the end of the day. It should be about Wanda, and then also not it just being a setup. Like, yes, it is a lead-in to the next phase of the MCU and Doctor Strange 2, but it would be great to also have something that's purely Wanda.
Yes. That I totally agree. So this could be Lore. Now, here's another villain for you to consider. In the comics, Wanda does fight Lore, and so do some of the other Avengers, and the Scarlet Witch wins. So,
and it's always great to have those villains that you can just kind of get rid of. Also, like the throwaway villains. You know how like one of the big things that people on the internet like criticize Marvel about is they get rid of their villains too quickly. Well, like if you yeah, people criticize them because like a couple of like, you know, like Ironmonger, who's such a huge, you know, like against Tony all the time, and he's such a huge part of like the Iron Man story. They just get rid of him in the first movie, and they do that a couple other times with some other villains that are actually part of bigger comic book stories that they just get rid of. You know, Mysterio is another one. Like they just got, you know, he just dies, and like Mysterio is a huge Spider-Man villain. He's part of the Sinister Six. Like there's not like there's no reason to kill them right away. So it'd be nice to have a villain that they can kill right away, to do like a little bit more of a deep dive into like, okay, well, who's the villain that we can do a one-off? Like even Killmonger, like Killmonger like shouldn't have died in the first Black Panther movie. That shouldn't have been a thing. So I'm all for, if this is like a turn for Marvel to like set up bigger villains that do play bigger parts, and then have but also deep dive into comics to figure out, okay, who are the villains that we can kill off in kind of like a one-off storyline.
Yeah. Also, a lot of those villains are dead, but multiverse.
But yeah, I know, but multiverse, I get it.
I really want them to bring Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio back. I thought he was phenomenal.
He was so great as Mysterio, and the fact that he's not exactly Mysterio from the comics.
Yeah.
Like they could very easily bring back Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio.
Oh.
Like what he's like in the comics versus like he was Tony's assistant or like he worked for the Stark Industry or whatever. Yeah, they could bring him back as like the actor guy or the stunt guy.
There's all my side thoughts.
Those are tons of side thoughts. Like I said, this episode is going to be super long.
Yeah. And so Wanda's looking around, and Agnes comes down and says, whoops, she's Agatha Harkness. Just like we said she would be.
And we both fist bumped.
And then she gets the best theme song.
The best theme song in the world. Though I am going to publicly shame all of my friends who watched this and changed on Friday, aka drop day, their Twitter name to quote, it was whoever, like insert name here all along. Come on, guys, give it the weekend.
So even with this side theme song just for Agatha, they still are paying homage to an old sitcom, The Munsters.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great.
With the bone, like, oh, I loved it.
Yeah. And it shows her doing everything. And it says she's been messing up everything. She controlled Herb for that one conversation. Mm-hmm. She's been controlling Quicksilver. She was messing with Vision with the gum. And then she says she also killed Sparky, which maybe we'll find out that it was a Wundagore Everbloom thing.
Yep. I don't know. Because that actually would be great if it was the Everbloom thing, like we've been talking about, and they have shown those roses a lot.
There's a lot.
So that would
it might be another just like nod to that in the comics,
but
also the dog did die.
Yeah, but I liked my little like she was messing with Vision, because there was literally no other explanation for that scene being so weird except she had to have been messing with him, right?
Yeah, you nailed.
That was our other win. We have a lot of wins in this episode. It made me happy.
And then this episode had the first post-credit scene ever for the show, which is Monica looking around the outside, sneaking around the outside of Agatha's home, and Quicksilver comes up and says, Snooper's gonna snoop. She was looking into the basement, and when she looks up, her eyes are purple. So unclear to me if that was from looking in the basement or if that Quicksilver's under mind control and can control her like Can she do
So,
that?
I have thoughts on this. My thought on this was, again, this has the baseline of Nightmare being involved.
Yes.
Of course. So we have hypothesized that Nightmare can jump between people that he possesses. Yes? Yes. So far, the people that we think has possessed are Agatha and potentially Quicksilver. Yes? Yes. Both those people are people with powers, be that magic, be that mutant. Those are people with powers. Oh, look, Monica showed up. She's another person with powers. So Agatha, this is probably around the same time that she's revealing herself to Wanda. So maybe Nightmare's not in her at that time, but oh, look, he found Monica. That's my theory.
That's interesting. Do you think that that Monica got magic in her from looking into the basement? Or do you think
that Quicksilver showing up going, Snooper's gonna snoop, was like Nightmare. And then like I think that the purple in the basement basically kind of detected Monica's powers, you know? And that's why her eyes turned purple, because like, you know, she went through the hex, her eyes turned blue, and then this is now other magic affecting her. Her eyes turn purple. Remember, she can absorb and sense energy. So she was absorbing that purple energy, purple magic energy. And then Snooper's gonna snoop is Nightmare recognizing an energy being pulled, source of the energy.
Yes. It's worth noting that in the comics, Nightmare's magic is green.
Yeah.
They could change it.
They could change it,
but
Nightmare's magic is green. And in the MCU, Doctor Strange's magic is like orangey yellow-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, I'm going to say this because I don't want people and being like, but he also uses red and he also uses green. Yeah, he's using the time stone. That's green. We already know that. That's when you see him green, it's when he's using the time stone. And when he's using red, it's because he's called on other magics from other places. And he calls upon that magic specifically. His magic that you see him channeling is always the yellow orangey color.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same that the other sorcerers use. Like Wong, his magic is the same color.
So does the Ancient One when she's showing him. Like, that's the magic that they channel. Okay? Yeah. Okay, guys. So before we haven't, oh my God, knock on wood, we haven't really had trolls yet, but I'm preparing for whenever we get them.
So we mentioned throughout this that the magics that were showing up, one of them has been green. It's green in barrier, green when stuff is changing, and then obviously purple would be Agatha. So it does seem like there's someone else at play, maybe two people in play, because there's also been some blue.
Yeah.
But the blue, I feel like could have maybe be a misdirect because it's close to purple. Blue and red make purple.
And also, the blue confuses me too, because the blue is what is now being associated with Monica and her eyes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Potentially the blue was a misdirect because it's like a purpley green. When you mix them together and pull out certain tones, you could get a blue in there. So maybe blue is just the generic electromagnetic energy that now Monica's going to be blue. I don't know.
Maybe. I think it's possible that if it ends up where, let's say, Dottie is like another witch, it could be her magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a chance there's a little coven here in town.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that would be great too if it turns out Dottie is just another magic, because I like that Agatha said magical girl. Like, you didn't think you were the only magical girl in town. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And that also made me think Sailor Moon. There could be another magical girl.
There could be.
Yeah.
Or boy.
There definitely is a magical boy.
Well, yeah, but I meant in the town already.
I know. Like Herb
or the postman. So we have a bunch of questions.
So many questions. There's such good ones this week too. So thank you guys for that.
great questions. And I do want to throw out there that feel free if you want to ask us a question that's not about WandaVision.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you want to know what was going on with Thor in Endgame, ask us.
A great point. Or if you want to know what's going on with like, you know, I'm trying to think of like Silk in the comics, or like, you know, like ask us anything that you want answered and we'll answer it even if it has nothing to do with WandaVision. Like you can ask us our opinion on anything Marvel comics and we're willing to answer it, and probably some other nerd stuff that has nothing to do with Marvel comics. A good one would be to ask Tab for book recommendations, because literally I ask her for them all the time and she's never steered me wrong. So there you go.
After WandaVision ends, we're gonna move into talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki and Black Widow and pretty much any Marvel content that's coming out. There's something being released every single week this year.
And then also, I mean, if we for some reason run out of stuff that they're releasing currently, Tab and I have already decided to like at some point backtrack and do some of the other stuff and just kind of talk about some fun references that happened in, you know, the Iron Man trilogy or the Thor trilogy, or just to go back and, you know, talk about Wasp and her, like how she is in the MCU, but what she's actually like in the comics, because it's a very different version of Wasp. So yeah, ask us any questions. We're here to talk about this. That's like why we did this.
Okay, so let's go first with Occasional Geek.
Shout out to her and her amazing jewelry line. If you like geeky jewelry, or you have someone in your life who likes geeky jewelry, please shop at her with her stuff. She just released an amazing Star Wars Rebels inspired line and it's fantastic. So just saying, shout out to her and her jewelry line.
So she asked several questions in a row.
They're all so good though.
A lot of people did this, which is fine. So let's see. I'm just going to read all of them because they are related to each other.
Yeah, they build.
Do you think Agatha actually killed Sparky? Does that kill the theory that the animals are Mephisto? Or since she is in league with Mephisto, did she just say that to create drama or something else entirely?
I think that Agnes is an unreliable narrator. So personally, she probably did kill Sparky, but I do think it's the situation with the flowers that you were talking about. Like if she did kill Sparky. We know that the rabbit is still alive, so it's more likely that it did not kill the Mephisto theory, that the animals are Mephisto, that if Sparky is dead, that, you know, Mephisto could still be the rabbit.
He could be. Yes. Yeah.
I saw the stork in this episode again when she was getting messed with. So yeah. There are other animals that Mephisto could be to keep the animals are Mephisto theory alive.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I agree. I think she probably killed Sparky. I think she even went as far as to say he ate one of her plants. Like, if you eat Wundagore Everbloom, you have to be killed so that the person can cut it out of your stomach and eat it again.
And I do.
Those are the rules.
Yeah, I really do think that that's what happened there, because she did say he was eating her plants. We all know that she has the roses in her garden. So it's very, I think R.I.P. Sparky.
Okay, so Wendy Polson also asked several questions. The first of which is what do we think about Agnes / Agatha? Is she actually good and actually evil? I think, yeah. We've talked before about how Agatha's kind of a gray character anyway, although to Wanda, she's mostly been good, which speaks again to someone else being involved, probably. Right.
So she is considered a mentor to the Scarlet Witch. If you even just decided to Google Agatha Harkness after seeing this past episode, one of the first things that shows up on Marvel's wiki is like it says like role, and it's like mentor to the Scarlet Witch. So most people don't think of a mentor as a bad thing. Like obviously there are like toxic mentor mentee relationships, but she's, to Wanda, she's usually quite helpful and at least provides guidance, whether it's good or bad. Again, we've mentioned that Wanda walks the line quite often of being the villain and the hero so many times that it makes sense for her mentor to also have some of the same qualities. Do I think that she's all good or all bad here? No, I don't. I think that she's out for something that she wants, because that's what Agatha Harkness does. It's what does she want? And yes, to agree with Tab, I think there's a larger force at play, because I don't think this was just Agatha all along, in spite of her very catchy song.
Oh. Yeah, and here's something important to remember. This show has been full of already red herrings, weird things, confusing things. Like, we already had Monica forever ago say that it was all Wanda. And now they're telling us it's all Agatha. And I think it's very important to note that Jack Schaefer, one of her big influences for this show, was the TV show Lost.
Yeah.
And Lost messed with you.
The king of red herring shows. The king,
red herring,
queen, and I was obsessed with Lost when it came out.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
Secret identities, people being someone but then not being them, but then being someone else. Like,
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Just how many different people was Ben in Lost?
So many.
So many people. Oh my God. Anyway. So yeah, it's all Wanda. It's all Wanda. It was Agatha all along. I think both of those things are simultaneously true and not true.
And then she asks, what happened to the kids? And I think they're tucked away somewhere.
Oh yeah, they're in a pocket dimension or something.
Pocket dimension, yeah. She put them in a side reality, or put them somewhere within Westview with something to occupy them.
We've already been shown in Doctor Strange the mirror dimension, which exists within our own dimension. They could be in the mirror dimension.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I think I think this question is probably partially asking if they still exist.
Oh yeah, they still exist.
Yeah, they're still around.
Murder the kids.
She needs them for something.
Yeah, she needs them for something. Whether it's Mephisto, whether it's Nightmare, whether it's her, there's something that the kids need to exist for.
Let's
see. So shout out to Naomi Brigg for asking us awesome questions that we answered during the course of our show.
She does mention that it looks like Pietro isn't Pietro, but she's still not convinced. And I am like all in Fox's Peter Maximoff being mind controlled.
Oh, no, I'm all in on that too. I definitely think that, again, because I really want it to be Nightmare, I really think that Nightmare is using vessels, and that this is Peter Maximoff from the Fox universe, but he's also a vessel, which is why, Evan Peters being such a brilliant actor, which is why there are like some scenes where he just seems confused, and then other scenes where he's like oddly confident and over asking a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. And there's also, if you go back in the Halloween episode and kind of compare how he looks from scene to scene, there'll be a scene where he's like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and like, and then it'll go to a scene where there's like red around his eyes and he looks like kind of sunken. So I definitely think something is using him. Well, we know Agatha was. We saw her.
We saw her we saw the purple magic.
Yeah, so at the very least.
So we know that there's at least that happening, but
and the Nexus being involved somehow, somewhere.
Yeah.
Really easy to just pull him out of that dimension.
Yeah, and then also I just really think that Nightmare's using him as one of the vessels.
Yeah, probably. Michael Messia would like to know our prediction on a Cumberbatch cameo, which we actually did kind of cover. We both think it's
yeah. I feel like I cover it every episode. Every episode, I find a way to bring up that I think that Doctor Strange is going to be on this show.
And then he also wants to know if this takes place before, during, or after Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think it's probably overlapped.
I think it is too. I think that because remember, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was supposed to actually air first.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to come out before The Mandalorian last year, but COVID happened, it got delayed. So I don't think that there's gonna be, I think it has to be happening at the same time, because if Falcon and the Winter Soldier absolutely had to air first because of timeline reasons, I think Marvel would have held everything.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that maybe it starts before, since Wanda had to go do some stuff.
Yeah.
To get to the Hex. It starts before. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of end scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier that connects it.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that.
Jeremy Hatcher, in one of the interviews recently, Paul Bettany said the mystery actor in the last of the show is a name that hasn't come up yet, and also mentioned it's someone he has fireworks with. So basically this question is, Paul Bettany in some interviews has talked about how excited he was about one of the cameos. No one has guessed who it is yet. He has specifically said he was not referring to Evan Peters, and he, without saying whether or not Doctor Strange is in it, has said he's not talking about Doctor Strange. So there is some big cameo coming, probably in the final episode. I think there's a couple things here. If we're referring to an as yet unrevealed villain, it could be literally anyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If it's because he says that it's someone who hasn't been mentioned yet. So like that could be, potential Mephisto casting, potential Nightmare casting. That could be literally anyone. We have fan cast it, sort of, kind of. But that could be, you're literally talking about anybody who could be acting that maybe Paul Bettany wants to act with. Now, if you're talking about people who haven't come up in the show yet, but already exist in maybe the MCU, maybe the Fox universe, because now the Fox universe is in play. Mm-hmm. Tab and I have talked about this, and there are lots of potentials.
My number one choice is Patrick Stewart returning as Professor X. I think it makes sense as someone you maybe that an actor would aspire to want to work with.
Right.
And I also think narratively it makes a lot of sense, because in House of M, Professor X is the first one who tries to snap Wanda out of it.
Right. So narratively it makes sense. Who wouldn't want to work with Patrick Stewart? I mean, I want to work with Patrick Stewart, and I have no reason to. I just want him to come over to my house and do social media with me for a day. The other thing that I thought was really funny is, so Lizzie Olsen has continuously said a Luke Skywalker cameo-esque thing, right? Like it's that level. Mm-hmm. Who did Luke Skywalker do an Uber Eats commercial with this year several times? There's like a series of Uber, I'm stretching, but I also think Patrick Stewart as Professor X would make complete sense for a fireworks level actor that anybody would aspire to work with, and someone who makes complete sense for the story. We know that the Fox universe is being folded in because of Evan Peters as Quicksilver. So to add to that, my other prediction is an Ian McKellen as Magneto.
Yes.
Because he would be someone that Quicksilver would recognize, interestingly enough. And and also in, past timelines, the Maximoff children have been at least lied to about the fact that they're Magneto's children. So
and in the MCU, they could actually be his children.
Right. So and also there's a lot of hints to maybe possibly Magneto showing up at some point. What better way to justify Hayworth in his fear of superpowered people than to bring in the person who creates a ton of fear constantly against superpowered people or mutants. However, more likely it would be Patrick Stewart to make sense of mutants and to introduce them. Like, if you're going to introduce mutants into the MCU, why wouldn't you have Professor X do it?
Yeah, he's the guy that you talk to about mutants.
Yeah,
like there's no one better.
Yeah.
And also, now it could also be McAvoy or Fassbender, but I think that's less likely just based on Paul Bettany saying things like, "I've wanted to work with them my whole life."
Yeah.
So to me, that speaks to an older actor.
Agreed.
Also, you can do a deep dive on Paul Bettany's IMDb, like I've tried to do, and try to eliminate people that way. But the problem is you can say like, oh, he's been in a movie with Ian McKellen, but then you have to try and figure out, did they even have any scenes together? So, and then the other part of Jeremy's question is that he's asking, do you think there's a chance it's someone who's already dead in the MCU, someone like the Ancient One? So that, I'm guessing that's his guess.
That would be great. I do think the Ancient One's dead.
Yeah.
Mostly
she had that whole thing where she was like, I keep ending up at this one point. I can never get any further.
Yeah, because being the Sorcerer Supreme, she knew the moment, and she got to that moment, and she didn't move past that moment. And even in Endgame, when Bruce went back and talked to her, she says, Stephen is meant to be the best of us. She basically puts all her cards in Stephen's basket moving forward. I do think the Ancient One's probably dead. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I don't want her to be either, but I think she is.
Yeah.
But the possibility of it being someone who is already dead in the MCU is interesting.
It is interesting.
I don't know if I agree with it.
Like, the caliber of actor that I think it would have to be for it to be someone who's already dead in the MCU would be Robert Redford, and I think that's a little weird.
And the other one that I thought of for the caliber of actor, it would have to be Robert Redford or Jeff Bridges. And both, like, Jeff Bridges is crazy. Like, who wouldn't want to, again, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But again, that'd be super weird to have like Ironmonger show up.
Yeah. Like, Hela.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, great. Like,
Hela actually, out of those three, makes the most sense because she could come through the Nexus-ish. I don't know. It just would be really tough.
It would be. Yeah. I think the
more likely scenario is that it's someone, I think, from the Fox universe, be it Patrick Stewart, who was both of Tab, my primary guess for this, or potentially Ian McKellen.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be someone from the Fox universe, that was never introduced through Fox. So it could be an X-Man, just one that we've not seen before. And then again,
that could be anybody.
That could be anyone.
Yeah. However, hilariously enough, like, wouldn't it be great if it was Deadpool? Because we know that he's getting an MCU movie, but the likelihood of Paul Bettany wanting to work his entire life with someone who's the same age as is less likely.
Well, I like to go into everything now just believing that Deadpool could show up at any time for any reason.
I mean, now that Disney has Deadpool, like, yeah, it could be someone who shows up.
Who knows when he'll first show up?
Yeah, he can show up he could just pop through any reality. That's like what he does.
He could be and not be the person that they're talking about.
Right. That's true. He could be another red herring situation. I also think it'd be interesting now that Disney has acquired all the Netflix rights back for it to be someone who potentially was in one of the Netflix shows.
Oh, that would be fun. There's a lot of rumors that Daredevil's in Spider-Man 3.
And there's a lot of like fan headcanon that Jessica Jones is going to show up on the She-Hulk show.
That would make sense.
It would make sense. It would also make sense to have Colleen show up on that show too. And Misty Knight.
Yep.
That show, basically, the She-Hulk show could just grab all the women from the various Netflix shows. They could all wind up on that She-Hulk show very easily.
Love that.
That would be amazing. I would love that too. But we're talking about WandaVision.
We're talking about WandaVision.
And potential cameos. But yeah, I just if it's not Doctor Strange, then I think the most likely one would be Patrick Stewart. Second most likely.
It's for sure Doctor Strange is not the person that Paul Bettany's referring to, whether or not he makes an appearance.
Right. The one real interesting one too, also based on source or material that we think that they're pulling inspiration from, be super interesting for it to be Wolverine, considering that he also shows up to try to help out Wanda in various scenarios, including House of M. But I don't think it's Hugh Jackman because he kind of seems done with Wolverine. And also, again, same age group as Paul Bettany.
Yeah, fair. Okay, and Wendy Polson sent us some more questions via a different thing. Do you think that Vision is going to somehow sacrifice himself to break the spell of the Hex? I was wondering what happens to Wanda once the Hex breaks. Like if she'll go out into hiding or hide out.
I think that Wanda might wind up after the Hex breaks out. I think there are a couple potential possibilities for what happens to Wanda. One is she's just arrested. Two is somehow Doctor Strange protects her in some sort of way, be it a pocket dimension or
like boop.
Yeah, or Doctor Strange does something to prevent her from just being taken by Sword and, traumatizing her all over again. Another possibility would be that she has tapped into enough of her potential power by the end that she saves herself and escapes and kind of does a nomad Wanda thing where she's jumping from dimension to dimension, hence creating the multiverse of madness and needing the Avengers all over again.
I think that Doctor Strange is going to show up and be like, all right, come with me.
Yeah.
She's going to be like, I got to help you. I got to teach you how to get some of this under control. And we got to deal with this big mess. So
I hope that that's what happens. I think there's still a potential for her to turn heel, in which case I think that scenario happens and she says, no, I'm going to do this on my own, and multiverse hops.
Yeah. And then the first part of her question about, is Vision going to sacrifice himself? I hope not.
I hope not too, but I think that once the Hex is depleted, I think that he's going to be the black and white version.
Oh, yeah. So he would exist, but he would have lost all his memories, no longer care about Wanda.
Yeah. And I think and if she does the heel turn and pocket dimension jumps or multiverse jumps, I think that that's going to be the final straw.
Yeah.
Like maybe Doctor Strange convinces her to take everything down. She takes everything down, but then sees what happens to him and is like, F this, I'm out. My world just got shattered again. No one can help me. Bye.
I don't think she can take this stuff down by herself. It's not all hers.
Well, yeah. I think that Doctor Strange helps her take it all down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has to
But I think that
overpower the other magic people. Let's say.
Yeah. Yes, all of that. But I just think that if she takes it all down and then Vision's not Vision on the other side, that's gonna just break her again.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know he can't leave the Hex right now. We still don't know why.
Yeah.
We don't know if Wanda knows why.
Yeah.
She knows he can't.
We know that the Mind Stone stays intact, but Vision doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I just really think that if something happens to him, if she can't have him, the whole world was created to have him. Well, in her mind, from her perspective. Anyway, I just don't want her to. If she's broken again, we're gonna see a real big heel turn.
Yeah. From Lampkin Michael D.
Michael Lampkin, I know him.
If Agatha has the Darkhold, think we'll be seeing Ghost Rider soon. Keanu, perhaps.
Keanu Ghost Rider would be rad.
Ghost Rider, it's interesting too because we talked about when it was like this could be Mephisto. Mephisto created the first Ghost Rider, right. So not too far off.
Too far off. Though I really, if we're gonna get Ghost Rider, I want it to be Cosmic Ghost Rider this time.
Fair.
Because we've already just like those two movies did so much to just like Ghost Rider that I'd like it'd be cool to get Cosmic Ghost Rider. Like a total.
Yeah, I think Ghost Rider's coming. I don't think yet.
Yeah. But also they had Ghost Rider was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They had the Robbie Reyes version of him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe.
So we've had him, and if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does turn out to be canon and is somehow Multiverse of Madness, we could potentially have Robbie Reyes, who does exist.
Yeah. Another interesting thing to note, again, about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and whether or not it's canon, they're using some actors in WandaVision that were in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as like small parts, not main characters, but they are the same actors. And while it's been done and all that, I think that's another indicator that they ended up in a different timeline. Mediocre Jedi. Do you think Pietro is Senor Scratchy?
No.
He could be. He could be your familiar, but no. No. I think he's Fox Quicksilver.
I also think that Mediocre Jedi is messing with us in that question because I don't think he thinks that.
I don't think he does either. Evil Rascal. Hi, Caesar. Hi. Are we going to get 2 sword factions? I think Hayward's an outlier.
Yeah.
I think Hayward go bye-bye.
Yeah. I think that Monica will be this like sword.
Yeah, I think Monica will take over once they deal with Hayward, and he's either going to run off and be a villain, like doing villain stuff somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or they'll get rid of him entirely, but yeah.
So superhero prejudice, yeah, right? Magic, Baron Mordo.
Ooh.
If Hayward escapes, wouldn't that be an interesting team up?
It's interesting too because we know that
he's coming
Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to have
Zito.
Yeah, Zemo, who also his whole thing is his whole thing is no more superheroes. Like there is potential here for a supervillain team up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because also at the end of the first Doctor Strange, Baron Mordo's like, I'm taking away power that y'all didn't earn.
Yep.
That's how I'm gonna do my thing.
Zemo's like, I'm gonna turn everyone against each other.
Yeah. So
I win.
That would be really interesting too, because if this is the direction that they're headed in, with like no more superheroes, no more mutants, no more sorcerers.
Yep. Yeah, I could definitely see him becoming a villain on his own, away from everything else, and then teaming up. Alicia Sherrod. Hi, Alicia. I know she was grieving her loss by making her own world. Did Wanda make this week's villain?
Like, did she make Agatha?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think, like we've said, Agatha, she knows what's up.
Yeah. And she's known what's up. You can, if you want to rewatch all the episodes, like maybe I potentially did yesterday, it's very obvious that Agatha's playing along.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we've even talked about that on the show, how like Catherine Hahn changes herself and her acting style to match.
Yep. Okay. So Time Taurus on YouTube, talking about Nightmare, says that at one point Nightmare was a servant of Shuma Gorath in the comics. Is it possible this is a version who hasn't quite left yet and could be secretly testing the waters of this dimension for a Shuma Gorath invasion?
Potentially? I mean, that would be a little on the nose for the MCU, I feel like. Because you know how the MCU, like, they like to take storylines and tweak them or mirror them or do something that's like slightly different than the comics.
Yeah.
If Nightmare is a scout at this point, I don't know that it would be that exactly to the storyline. Do you know what I mean?
He's more like Agatha's the scout.
Yeah. Like Agatha's the scout for Nightmare or Mephisto or whoever it winds up being.
Well, and then I'll just say shout out Ashley on Twitter. You asked us a ton of questions, and I think we just happened to cover them in the course of our conversation.
Yeah, but they were really good questions. Feel free to ask us more. It also seems like you kind of have a really great grasp on the characters of the MCU. So if you want to ask us, again, I'm going to emphasize this a couple times. If you guys want to ask us anything, we're down to answer anything that's not just related to WandaVision. And it's more likely that we won't cover it in the course of our conversation if it's a random question that you just want us to answer.
Yeah. There's a ton of stuff that I still see people asking questions about online and stuff that we would gladly, like on Reddit or whatever, that we gladly cover for you.
Just had to bring in my familiar since he's bugging me again.
Someone did ask about our brooch because we finally got a clear, and I don't know where that was. Maybe it was someone was talking to me. But what I thought was interesting is like the brooch is like, it has like 3 ladies on it, which like, yeah. So I'm wondering if
Dottie.
Yeah. And is this, like I said, if it's a coven situation, if it's some magical ladies, maybe they need a 3rd lady to do their spells. Sometimes you need multiple witches to make stuff work.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
As the Craft taught us.
Yeah, the Craft, the Sanderson sisters. Come on. Yeah. Sometimes you just need a coven. Do it on your own. I get that.
We've also had a couple people ask her message the end credits always go through Vision's eye before it turns into like the red, blue, green stuff. And again, this show inspired by Lost. Boy, did they love close-up.
They loved eyes. The show literally starts and ends with eyes.
Yeah. And so many episodes start and end by going into someone's eye. Yeah, so I think that is a nod to Lost. But then also when you go through him, it's like you're almost like inside him. What makes him up? And there's 3 things going on, and one of them would be Wanda. And then 2 other things.
Okay, well, that is all the questions that we have. Once again, you can send us any questions that you want in regards to the Marvel Universe or anything. We will try to answer as many as we can on our next episode and every episode moving forward. Thank you so much for watching our deep dive into episode 7 of WandaVision. I'm Susan.
I'm Tab.
And we are MCU Explained. All of our social media information is in the description below. Once again, like us, subscribe to us, follow us on all major social media platforms, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye. I also really, for some reason, wanted to say witches bewitchin', and I have no idea.
Witches bewitchin'.
It's also like bewitchin' sounds cool, like witches bewitchin'.